I'm going to talk about the data sources. A lot of you guys and a lot of people on the social forums don't trust the data we're getting from the Michigan DNR. I think that's misplaced. The data that you need to not trust is the comparative data that I'm going to show you. The first data set that I use for this presentation is Michigan's annual harvest survey. The DNR gets data from an average of 28,000 hunters every year related to hunter numbers, harvest numbers, hunting locations, days spent in the field, and much more. I will be showing harvest data from other states, but it is for the most part much less reliable than the harvest data from Michigan. Examples. I cannot compare hunter numbers because important comparison states like Ohio and Indiana don't really know how many hunters they have. We do. Several Midwest states don't know how many deer are harvested because they get the information through mandatory check stations. And they do not know what the compliance rates are. What are they going to do? Call a guy up and say, did you illegally not report your deer last year? They don't know how many hunters report. It could be 10% don't report. It could be 30%. It could be 50%. Some of them just make up a number. Like New York divides it by 0.45 because they guess that maybe 45% of hunters don't report. All mandatory, I have this in red because I want to emphasize it. All mandatory check systems are underreported, and it is not possible to know by how much, so there is no statistical reliability. Michigan, because they do a huge survey, is able to do statistical analysis and report confidence intervals. Most of the big states don't and can't. And I'm just going to real quickly show you a table here. What I do with my pointer. And this is one of 20 tables that are in the, oh, the pointer's not working, that are in the annual report that Brian Frawley puts together for the DNR. And look at, there's all this data here. This happens to be statewide deer harvest. You can look here, there's 178,000 bucks harvested in Michigan. And if you look at the number next to it, it's 4,433. What's that number? That's plus or minus. That's a confidence interval. And that's plus or minus about 4%. So I can look at that and go, hey, that's a pretty good number. I don't need to be plus or minus 2% or 1%. I can make decisions based on 4%. Then you go up here, and this is a UP. Well, they only have killed 19,000 bucks. And they're plus or minus 7%. So you can look at that and know that's not quite as reliable a number. But it doesn't matter because they don't do math in the UP anyway. At least that's what I heard. I think Leon Hank knows how to do math. He's an accountant, right? But the rest of you guys I don't know about, George. If you look at Indiana harvest data, there's no statistics here. I'm supposed to believe that those numbers are how many deer are being killed in Indiana. I don't know that. They don't even know how many hunters they have. This is from a mandatory reporting system. This is the methods that are in the report that Brian Frawley puts together every year. It's a detailed methods section that tells exactly how Michigan collects their data. If you haven't read this, you can't have an opinion about data collected in Michigan. It's like having an opinion about a movie that you haven't seen. Read this stuff, because we've got lots of people on our site that are saying things about how we collect data that just aren't true. And as ambassadors, each and every person in this room can help us. I was a scientist, as you heard earlier. By the way, that's all that hyperbole. I'm really just a redneck from Michigan, like a lot of you other guys are. And I want what is best for Michigan. But I peer-reviewed a lot of papers when I was a scientist for journals, for scientific journals. I can tell you a Michigan harvest survey could be submitted to and accepted in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. That's how good it is. And that's not true of any other of the other Midwest states that I've looked at. None of the big buck states. Second data source is the Michigan annual check station reports. The DNR gathers data from tens of thousands of deer every year. 25,000 deer in 2014. We biocheck about 7% of the harvest. That's higher numbers than any other state. This is a graph I made where I ranked it. Who biochecks the most deer? Michigan does, by far. Heck, in Canada, they don't biocheck any deer. All those ones down at the other end are Canada. The big buck states, most of them don't check very many deer. So we get more biological information about our deer than any other state. Check station data are probably biased. They're probably biased towards older bucks because it's a voluntary system. And most biologists think that when you have a voluntary system that people are more likely to bring a bigger buck in than a smaller one. And that's reflected in our check station data in that you don't get as many does as you do bucks, and you don't get as many button bucks as are probably killed. But we also do get supplemental data from some aging and scoring. That's not a lot, but that also biases the data. But bias in science is acceptable as long as you know it's there. We're not trying to get an exact number. We're trying to look at differences between one region and another or one point in time versus another. And I'll just show you an example of that in a minute. Some states may have some more accurate data because they get their data from a processor. People are more likely to bring all their deer, fawns, does, and bucks into a processor than they are to a check station. Check station data are not used to collect harvest numbers because they're voluntary and they're not proportionally representative of what was killed. They're used to determine age, antler characteristics, and other things. So how do you interpret data? I said it's biased. How do you interpret biased data? Well, it's useful for purposes such as change over time, like this right here is showing in the Northwest 12, the 3 years before the APRs that Kevin was talking about, introduction of APRs in 2013, and this is what was in the yearling check station as a percentage over that time. So it doesn't matter if this is really 65% average or 70%. What matters is this shift. So you can say there was a tremendous shift in the representation that was brought into the check station. So you can get really valid information from it, even if it's offset and it's biased. So actually, if it's biased towards older bucks, it was actually worse than this before. And a little better than for now. And this red line is just the 3.5-year-olds, and that's just the opposite. They're overrepresented. So they provide minimal values for younger bucks and slight overestimates of older bucks. At least we hope they're slight. My last data source was Quality Deer Management Association's annual whitetail report. The advantage is it's a tabulation of data from different states, and everything's in one place, so I can just select it and put it into a spreadsheet. Disadvantages are that they lack statistics, and we don't know how those states collected that data. But at least it gives us something to go on. And this is just what one of those tables look like. And I strongly urge everybody here to read the QDMA whitetail reports if you don't.